Well, alrighty then. You know, I keep talking about keep plugging on and keep plugging on. And I was looking through my musical library the other day, which now, by the way, is on a folder, you know, in MP3 format as opposed to albums anymore. My brother stripped all those from me, threw those out. Got tired of lugging them around every time I moved, but that's what's good about MP3s now is the storage and the availability of them. And I came across this sampler of a radio station that I worked at, WRDU, and on this sampler were a bunch of new songs, 20 new songs. And on this sampler was this particular song from the Brandos. And I remember listening to it with a bunch of guys in the room. Wow, listen to that. Let's play that. And so we played it that day. 1987. And we played that song. We got just a ton of requests for it. Gettysburg is the name of that. Dave Kincaid and his boys. And we got a ton of requests for it. And they came into town to do a show. And they played at the brewery on Hillsborough Street in 87. I believe it was late 1987. And the place was sold out. Probably stood 110, 120 people. And it was one of the first shows I ever got to introduce. And I jumped up on the stage, ladies and gentlemen, the Brandos. And the crowd went nuts. And you get down off the stage and you watch these guys go. And they have what I refer to as whatever it is, as elegant as I can be and as eloquent as I can be. There's no name for it. It's whatever that is, you know. And you watch these guys and they have this stark quality and the band had it. For sure, and they still do. Look at some of their videos, and I'm talking about the Brandos, as you know. But what a fantastic memory, what a fantastic day, and it's what you'd call roots rock, I guess. Never really thought about that till I talked to old Dave himself. But when the song came out in 1987, it just blew us all away. And they've been doing it ever since. When I talk about chugging along, new album in the works, you know, they've had 10 albums out there. All right, so Dave Kincaid joins us now from his home in New York. He's lived a lot of places, but he's in New York, and he's got a landline, which I love, you know, because you can understand conversations that way. But what a run in 1987 for the Brandos, Dave. I mean, it's just like everything just like took off.
It was great. Like, I mean, most bands, when they first take off, it's just a great time, and it's exciting, and you feel confident about what you're doing because you've had this big shot in the arm with just, first of all, getting a record contract, then having the thing get on the air, and then the press was kind of jumping on us, and we were getting nice reviews and a lot of airplay, and the whole thing was kind of steamrolls and snowballs, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually 30 years old at that point.
Okay.
And I was a veteran, and I didn't realize what a veteran I was till I went on those tours. You know, I've been playing clubs almost full time since I was 17.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't think twice about it. I mean, I just thought, well, that's what you do. You know, that's how you get going. That's how you learn your trade, which is true. I still contend that's what you should do. And then we get on the road with some of the bands we opened for, and we realized those guys didn't come from that background, that they really could do what they did, but they couldn't do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't really great musicians in that sense, but they did what they do.
Right.
So we realized, and that just kind of built us up even more. We realized, wow, we actually can do this. We can play. And we sort of come from the old school, like the Beatles, the Stones, whatever. They all played grueling club gigs forever before anything happened. And that was a good thing. It made them who they are. And the Beatles were good, man. They could play.
Amen.
And as were the Stones, as was the Who, as was Creedence. You know, these were all guys who just came up through the trenches. And we had. And it was weird to be with bands who were hugely successful who didn't do that, and consequently were really not that great, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, but we had a great time with it. Like, we were touring around. We were playing big venues, small venues, getting great reaction. That Gettysburg was really well received. Surprisingly, in the South, I didn't know how that would be taken. But it wasn't written to take sides. It was written to just sort of be an anti-war, you know, and sort of express the tragedy of that, and the fact that my family had been involved in every war that's come down the pike, you know.
Mm-hmm. We always treated it as a recount, kind of. None of us ever took sides with it when we listened to it. It was just kind of a recount, and you know, you love the spirit of it. And I was listening to a Janis Joplin interview the other day, and she's the only one I've ever heard really say this, that how, you know, I don't know what I do, and I guess people like it, and that's good. All I know is I just go up there and sing what I feel. You know, and you surely get that from the Brandos, and you surely get it from other bands too, like Zeppelin, for God's sakes. God.
Oh yeah,
you know, but and there's a good example. But when you can feel it, isn't that when it's the most successful and the most popular?
Well, I believe that's true. That the song's written from that standpoint, and we began to play it, and it just had something. It just had a force and a momentum, and it was just an outpouring of this emotion. And
right.
Especially for me, having grown up in the military and Vietnam era, and my father was there 2 tours of Vietnam. It just sort of resonated with me in a special way, and that somehow translated it to a whole lot of people. When we went down south, people thought we were Southern. Y'all are from New York. We thought you were Southern.
Yeah.
Nope.
What? That being said, man, who, if you think about it, I always ask this question because I love the answers and they're always different. Who's your personal king of rock and roll, if you think about it?
That is a tough question.
Sure it is.
The guy, after all these years, that has risen to this point of, I just revere this guy, and that would be Pete Townsend.
Excellent. I'm the same way. But why?
I mean, the man has just artistically been incredible. He invented things that we all take for granted. Big, powerful, heavy rock and roll, but he also wrote the first rock opera, which was brilliant. I mean, Tommy, but he also wrote these great catchy, pop rock tunes. My Generation, Kids Are All Right. How many others can you think of? But as I get older, the more I just come to be astounded at how great he was. And Live at Leeds is the quintessential live album. I don't leave home without it.
No, that version, 8 minutes of Magic Bus. Are you
Well, also, just, he's not considered by many to be like the quintessential lead guitar player, which may be true. But I only know this. That album is, from an electric guitar standpoint, the best playing, sounds, ideas. If he picks up a guitar, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. There's a lot of guys who can play circles around him in terms of, the fancy chops, but those are meaningless. Pete could put anything he played meant something. It was a statement. And the guy is just brilliant all the way around. So
absolutely.
If you're gonna make me pare it down to one guy, I'd have to say it'd be him.
Have you ever met Pete Townsend?
I have not met Pete. I've met a number of my rock and roll heroes. I met Keith Richards. I met we played for Deep Purple actually in Germany. We opened for them. They were great.
Were they? Was that David Coverdale, or who was that? Who was at the helm then?
No, this was the Machine Head lineup.
Oh, okay.
With the exception of Richie Blackmore, they had the guy from the Dixie Dreads, Steve Morse. I think
Steve Morse, yeah.
But all the rest were the guys from that Machine Head. Ian Pace on drums and
keyboard player
and John Lord.
John Lords, yeah.
Who I think is great. I love
no
him.
kidding.
And they were the nicest guys. I mean, they invited us backstage. They were curious. They had questions. They wanted CDs. And Ian Pace gave me the nicest compliment because we met them and we were talking. And he said, it was great tonight. We came in to the venue while you guys were playing. And I got out of the car and I stood there and listened for a second and went, wow, songs. And he said, you wouldn't believe the bands, because they get lumped in with these heavy metal bands, and in Europe, in Germany especially, some of those can be really awful. And, they'll come into the gig and there'll just be some racket going on.
Yep.
And they don't dig it at all, because they're not a metal band. They're a rock and roll, they're sort of a heavy, R&B band kind of.
Yeah, sure.
And, so he comes in and said, you guys actually had songs. And we were really knocked out with it. And I went, wow. I was humbled by it. I couldn't believe it. I listened to Machine Head in high school till there were shavings coming off the vinyl,
Yeah, yeah.
I played to that album a lot, along with, a number of others. But, no, I've not met Pete or John Fogerty. He was another huge hero of mine, Creedence.
Sure. Oh.
In fact, I lived in the Bay Area when I started playing. My father was, in Vietnam, late 60s, and Creedence was there. They were breaking. They used to do local, AM radio interviews, which I heard live.
Oh boy!
And it was awesome. And I've never met Fogerty either, or any of the other guys for that matter, which I would love to. I hope to someday.
Take a quick break here and play some the Brandos. They have new stuff coming out here, and can't wait to hear that. But I want to play Honor Among Thieves here. It's Dave Kincaid of the band, and this was our second single in 1987, which we played the crap out of too back then. We'll talk about Simon Kirk drumming on one of the Brandos songs in a few. The Blade Radio Show.